Yes, this New START treaty resumes the interactions with the Russian Federation that we had going with the START treaty that went out of force in December of 2009. So it's been over a year since we've had inspections and we've had the opportunity to exchange data about our nuclear forces and also to work together with the Russians to really see what's happening with their nuclear weapons overall. And it's the predictability that this treaty brings about, which is really foremost in its importance. It is so important and enhances our security so much when we understand what's going on with the Russian Federation and their nuclear weapons, and they understand what's going on with ours. So first and foremost, I would say it's the predictability that the treaty brings about. It also sets overall limits, central limits on the numbers of strategic nuclear forces. That is 700 delivery vehicles, those are missiles and bombers, and 800 deployed and non-deployed launchers. Those are like submarines and the silos for the intercontinental ballistic missiles, and 1,550 deployed nuclear warheads. So very important in that we understand exactly what the numbers are going to be in the Russian nuclear forces, and again, that they understand the same about our nuclear forces. Places an overall limit on those nuclear weapons. This document is so historic because we have been working with the Soviet Union and the Russian Federation since the early 1970s to limit and reduce nuclear arms. This is the second major strategic arms reduction treaty that we have brought into force with the Russian Federation. And it will allow us to get back into inspections with the Russians. It will allow us to begin to exchange immediately information about our strategic forces. So it is a very stabilizing document. It really helps us to understand what's going on with the Russian Federation, and they understand what's going on with us. And where nuclear weapons are concerned, that is all important. One of the important messages that President Obama has put out into the world, and it's a very important message, he gave in Prague in 2009 when he talked about his initiative to move in a step-by-step way to further and further reductions in nuclear weapons, leading eventually, although the President says not in his lifetime, but leading eventually to a world without nuclear weapons. So this treaty is a very important piece of that step-by-step process, and we are thinking now about next steps. Also, the Senate is too. When we went through the ratification process for the New START treaty, the Senate was very interested in seeing us begin new negotiations on non-strategic or so-called tactical nuclear weapons within a year. And they actually ask us in their resolution of ratification to seek to initiate those negotiations within a year. That's very much in line with what the President has in mind. When he signed the treaty in April of 2010, he said we will be moving on next to further reductions involving both strategic and non-strategic weapons, that's TAC nukes, and also non-deployed nuclear weapons. So we have our marching orders, and we'll be working very closely with the Russians to explore what the possibilities are. It is very, very important to consider carefully as we move to lower and lower numbers of nuclear weapons exactly what the impact will be on strategic stability. And that is one very important reason why President Obama, when he made his speech in Prague in April of 2009, he talked about the need to proceed deliberately in a step-by-step way, and at the same time to work very, very carefully and intensively on problems of regional security. We will never be able to move completely to a world without nuclear weapons unless the issues of strategic and regional stability are tackled around the world wherever we have serious problems. But I do think that it is important to remember the flip side. If we end up in a world where there are more and more nuclear weapons, where there's proliferation going on, that is going to have a very, very negative effect on international security and stability overall. And I think that was foremost in the President's mind, and indeed it is the top threat that we point to now when we concern ourselves, as our nuclear posture review has, for example, our military doctrine and policy, thinking about the proliferation of nuclear weapons. What happens if nuclear weapons fall into the hands of terrorists? These are the preeminent threats that we have to worry about today. Yes, during the Cold War, we had a stable balance between the United States and the Soviet Union. But I think the concern today is what happens when deterrence is not possible, because a nuclear terrorist cannot be deterred. We worry about some rogue countries not being deterrable. And so it's very important to think in those terms and to understand that in that context, we want to get the number of nuclear weapons down to lower and lower numbers.